All right, I'm doing good. It's good to see you guys, and I know we've had a few weeks, and we've all been hustling. So, why don't we get rocking? So I thought, as we stand here and we talk a lot about resilience, a lot, and I think it's not just a word, but it has to be a way of life if you're really gonna, use that, and it has to be proven, it has to be earned. And I thought versus Seattle having 3 fourth down stops in a row at the end of the game, that was it. That's the resilience that we talk about, and we had to live that. Now, don't get it twisted. I was happy about that part of the game, but there was a lot that I wasn't, and that certainly took up some of my sleep and some of my focus over the weekend. But man, do I love how tough we are, and what we stand for, and how we're ready to get it on at any time and in any situation. And there's a lot that can be gained from that. So I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that. I know we got lots to cover, and any games that you want to touch base on, I'm ready to let it rip.
Dan, David Moore, Dallas Morning News. You touched on some of the things you didn't like early in that game, and it hadn't been that long ago since you played Philadelphia,
Right.
which was one of, when you look overall at your performances this year, wasn't one of your better ones. So what are the key points coming out of that Philly game, and some things you saw in this last game that you can't allow to happen again in this regard?
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. We've got to have a chance to get the football, give it back to the offense. And I think one of the things that really make them who they are is how strong they are on third and fourth downs. So I'll call it third down just to say, but if I'm not mistaken, they were right around 50%, and that's right around what their average is. And so we've got to be stronger into that spot, knowing some of these are going to turn into fourth downs. So I thought those would be two of the really big keys, leaving that one and heading into it again.
Trying to Star Telegram. Talk about those 3 fourth down stops, and one of them starting with DeMarcus Lawrence and the way he sliced in and stopped the run. Just talk about the season he's had. I don't know if he gets appreciated what type of player
Yeah,
he is.
it felt like when those big plays have to happen, and quite honestly, some of them are in these smaller windows, and he's got such good instincts to jump outside, move inside, where the ball is going to go, and he just about always comes through on those, and it's one of the things I really admire about him. But those kind of toughness plays, it's a 4th and 2, it's 4th and 1, when he's got such good quickness that he can hit a gap, and when those moments happen, he's hard to stop. And I think part of it goes to his instincts and experience of playing. Okay, this is that time. This is the play we talked about. This is the look that we talked about, and he's able to recall those and knowing when to take a shot and when not to, because it'd be irresponsible just, hey, I'm going to go outside because I felt something. But for him, he usually has a pretty good sense of where it's been. I've seen it on the goal line. I've seen it backed up. I've seen it in these 3rd and 4th down moments. So those are those times that it's law time for sure.
This may have been the first offseason where he had a full offseason without coming off an injury and been as healthy. So obviously he's been healthy all year. Can you talk about how that has played a role in this play?
Yeah, for sure it has. And it's always tough when you lose somebody. And so for this year with, Trey and Leighton early, so having the ability to, stand on law, and we count on him for a lot. He's kind of one of our tone setters in terms of the toughness that we play with. He's always on point with that. And I think when he's not out there, you miss some of that. When we've missed him due to injuries in some past, like he has such remarkable toughness to him that he's just hard to play against, especially on those small, short yardage runs that would go to his side. He just has that knack of making the plays.
Dan Todder with ESPN. The last 2 games, the teams have had 300 yards passing on you guys. Is it something that is just getting the ball out quick and making it harder for you guys to impact the quarterback enough, or something on the back end that you need to look at?
Yeah, I'd say, well, one, you look at it all, and you never like to see the explosive plays, because all of a sudden that can turn into where you're in good shape, and then all of a sudden, a big play comes, and you add 30 or 40 yards onto a play, or in last week's game, quite a bit more than that, that you can add on to it. So I think having those and limiting those explosive plays, that's a big piece. And by and large, we've been stronger in that area. And so to have the last couple of weeks where we've given up some, it's definitely an area of focus for us.
Duran obviously had first half struggled and second half looked a little bit better. How do you think he handles the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows?
Yeah, I would say what I was probably talked about in the open about resilience, I could have been talking about him. To where it was hard, when you play outside at cornerback and quarterback, everybody kind of sees what's going on at those two positions. And if you're watching on TV or from home, it's easy to evaluate those positions. And so when you go through a tough spot or a tough stretch and you have to battle back and you have to go for it again, he does have that quarterback mindset that he's resilient, he's tough, knowing that that play took place, it happened, and I got to get on to the next one. Because if you linger on to something or you overthink it, the next one comes. So I think probably the term I'd use for him is resilience. He is tough as hell. He's ready to battle back, and I think going towards the end of the game to have an interception and maybe had a second one that he didn't come down with, but to know that, hey, they're coming after me and I'm going to stand up and fight for it, I thought that's a pretty good sign about who he is.
John Machota with The Athletic. Since Mike's become the head coach here, his record's been outstanding in December. I think it's 11-2, and obviously that includes your time being defensive coordinator as well. You guys have been good in December. Is there anything about maybe the way he structures things? Why do you think that that's been the case?
Yeah, I think Mike's got great, big picture, long view. Where sometimes as an assistant or a player, you stay into the moment of what you're going to do for this game or this matchup. And so for him, of laying out the whole thing of how we're going to go and how we'll play it. And then he's worked us a lot in terms of how we want to go and how we want to play and our play style to go. So he never backs off of that. And I think as the season goes on, you can get caught up in a scheme here or a scheme there, but he stays very, very consistent in terms of our play style, offensively, defensively, and special teams. And I think it's nice to always have something to go hang your hat on. This is how we get it on, whether it's September, October, December, and he's excellent at that.
Sajis at The Athletic again. Two questions for you. First, just a general question, really, about the tight end position. On the offensive side, you hear that it's the quarterback's best friend. As a defensive coordinator, how do you game plan against, how the tight end's relationship with the quarterback and trying to take the tight end away, and how important the tight end is to the offense?
Yeah, well, I think it's good. I think our league has shown that, man, we've got some terrific athletes who have length and size, and so you've heard me talk some before about finding people to match that type of speed and size, because it's not one size fits all. Where here's a 6'5" or 240 or 50 pound guy who can really run and run routes. So if you put a smaller DB on him, his catch radius and the quarterback can throw away from a leverage and win. Compared to a guy who's just the same size but might have the same athleticism. So I agree. I think when you have one that has athleticism and can extend away from the formation and run routes like a receiver, now that's a real advantage, because you're not just then defending 3 receivers but really 4. When the guys in the core, most of the really good ones have the ability to be run blockers and pass catchers. If you're just only one thing, that's still a hard thing, just like a receiver. But when somebody's in the core and has the run blocking ability to go along with down the seam throws, that's a real factor. And most of the best are excellent vertical routes or 7 cuts. That position when you're going from inside to break out, those are tough routes to cover. And the more speed, the more athleticism, that's when it shows up. So I think, much like basketball, some of these tight ends who have the speed and length and can handle the ball, those are the ones that are dangerous, and it's hard.
And then secondly, going back to Bland, the decision at halftime to have Gilmore follow Metcalf and kind of do that, what goes into that discussion, and how do you address that with Stephon and also with Duran of what the plan is in the second half?
Yeah, the good news for both of them, they're close, and certainly they work closely with Al, so sometimes you just want to find, hey, what's the best matchup for right now, for this play, for this scenario, for this situation. And so we're fortunate in that way that Steph's got plenty of experience going on both sides and matching, and Duran does too with his ability to be inside and out. So sometimes you just go with what you think's best at the moment, and it may not be that way for the whole game. It may be for a series or a certain call that you try to feature. So that's what we did in that instance. And so we'd have done the same thing had it been, shoe was on the other foot. So it's just a matter of, you try to match up what you think is best at that time.
Do you ever have to consider confidence with, a young player versus old player, things like that?
No, not. I would say if it was, I probably wouldn't have done that. If I was worried about, how somebody would react to it or that type of thing, I wouldn't put somebody into a spot that they, wouldn't thrive in. So I knew for those two, it would be something that would be easily for us to be able to adjust and easy to go back.
Hey Dan, Nick Harris, Dallas Cowboys.com. We're on Duran. Do you feel like there's anything positive that you can take away from that first half, especially considering that teams might be targeting him just as much, if not more, going forward?
Well, I'd say if they do, they better be careful. And going back to what I said earlier, it's not the easiest thing to do, when you give up a play and you have to come back and go fight for it again. But I think it just shows his mettle about what he's about and how he does to see him get some stops at the end. And I thought another player that really stood up in some tough spots was Jordan Lewis, and getting some stops on some third and fourth down. So as hard as it was early, I thought, man, when it really came down to the game on the line type of plays, guys like Duran and Jordan and Steph, man, did they answer in a big way.
How important has Gilmore been towards Bland's development and then Jordan as well this year?
Yeah, I think it's been big. We talked about it early with Trayvon, and through the offseason and training camp and what that would look like, and the two of them together. And Duran was a little bit of a byproduct of that, because some of the time he was playing nickel when Trey was outside. And so to see that combination going together, look, it's always more impactful when you hear it from a peer. Hey, think about this, think about it in this way. What if you saw it in this side? I mean, Al's fantastic because he literally lived that life where, a coaching point from him would be different than a coaching point from me. And the same thing goes with Steph in that way. That he's been off. He may see it exactly like Al or a little bit different, because I think at that position it's not just one size fits all where everybody stays down to play press, or if you're a big guy or a smaller guy, you play back. So knowing how to use some of those tools, that's a really big deal. And Steph is fully equipped to know where a leverage is, what a route is, when a stem takes place. So I've been most impressed with him.
Dave Loffner, Cowboys Radio. Dan, the first go-around with Philadelphia, Jalen had the knee. He didn't run. He wasn't even a threat to run. So do you look at how they attacked you in that game and think it'll be somewhat similar, or do you have to look at games where they've used him as a running threat?
Yeah, and I think over the year, I know he's over 100 carries, so that's going to, stand over time where, the carries are going to take place. But we know that's a real part for him, whether he uses legs to scramble, to remain a passer, to scramble, to run, or as a designed quarterback run. So all of those things factor in. As far as how much they use him or don't, that's not really our call. We'll always prepare for somebody of what they'd look like, doing it at the highest level or doing it the most, and then we can always adjust in game. But it's much easier to go about it that way than any other way.
But the first game, you didn't see him as a threat to run, right?
No, we did.
You did?
Yep.
Yes.
Jess Mars, Pro Football Network. Dan, can you talk about Jonathan Hankins and kind of the, spark that's ignited in him the last couple weeks, coming off of 2 sacks against Washington and then 1 against Seattle?
Right, and I think I can probably go even further back, because starting into this off season with him and going through training camp, it was such a different experience, and I can only imagine how difficult it would be for all of us to be dropped into a new job midway through the year. Everybody's kind of has their ways, and we're just trying to fit it in. And so when we got here and he got here, hey, this is how we're going to play. And I think he played maybe the same week that we got him. But during that time, I got to know him better and better. But this offseason, you really got to, feel his strengths, find out what makes him tick. How do we feature him in the best way? And I thought that really carried over into the season. And he and Law are 2 of the, more veteran guys that really set the tone for how things can be, and their toughness about where they're at. And I think the run game kind of improving goes a lot through John and through Law in terms of how they've played. So they've been excellent for us, and it's been nice to have a whole, more than a calendar year with him, because now I've got to find out all the special and unique things that he brings to our team. And it's a good lesson for all of us, knowing that when a player, gets traded in season, or you pick somebody up, it's not just, add water and kick ass and play. There's a lot that goes into that, and I think Hank's a great example of that.
As a coach, how do you take those veteran players and continue to up their game, even though, they've been playing for longer than some of the younger guys?
Well, I think it applies not just for the veteran guys, but for everybody, and we call them work-on. So we had our first 6 games. These were the things we want to get better at. We just finished another block of 6 games, and that's what we did today as a group, to find out individually for all the players what are the things in these next 5 that we have to get better at, and to find out the things over the last 6. Did it improve our performance? Did the things that we were working on carry over? Not all of them are on-field things, but our work-ons are a big piece of what we do, and so we did it for the first block. We did it for the the last 6 games, which just ended in our mind, and then this next block starts now. And if you think of those in almost like trimesters, we had 6, and here's the next 5. And going into this final trimester, what's the 1 or 2 things each of the players and coaches are trying to work on so we can be at our best, at the end of the regular season. And by doing those work-ons, I think it keeps you mindset and sharp to get better. And that's really, all of us should be doing that.
You have a great night, everyone. Coach, when you look at DeMarcus Lawrence, and you touched on it a little bit in terms of setting the tone with Jonathan Hankins, what has impressed you most about what you've been able to learn from him over the last few years and what you've been able to have him see within this defense?
I would say what I've been most impressed by him is his ability to now move to different spots. And he really played one spot, for a good majority of his career, which is left end. He was excellent at it. So coming here, asking him to do multiple things and different ways to go about it, I've certainly been impressed by that. The part of his game that I didn't know was so strong was this awareness that he has to create and make these big plays that take place on these critical moments in games. So that's something as an opposing coach you don't know. You just know, man, this guy's tough, he's a dog, he's relentless. But then now I know, the work that goes into it. And that moment is never too big for him. He wants it all the time. And I love that about him.
For a veteran, how do you find different ways to motivate him, knowing that he's deep into his career, but still wanting to contribute and be as good as he can be?
I think always making sure that the tone is set for how we want to play. And we absolutely lean on him for that kind of style. So him and Donovan, to me, are the ones that are tone setters on the defense in terms of bringing the physicality and making those type of impact hits and plays that give our defense a lot of energy. And so I even have a term, the energy generating ball. A lot of it goes through him, that these big plays take place and these big hits that he's known for. They just light the stadium up. They light our sideline up. And those kind of plays, they're fun to be a part of.
Skyler Dixon with the AP. You talked about the nature of the cornerback position earlier. I wondered when Duran was on that historic run of pick sixes, I guess it's not really over. Did you all ever talk about, hey, difficult days might be coming, or does that just kind of go without saying because you know what that position is like?
Yeah, we didn't say that it might be coming, but it is something that we do discuss on a regular basis to make sure outside on that freeway, one ball gets over your head or they get a catch, it gets seen by everybody. So it's probably more of just how we operate to make sure, hey, let's stay in the moment of what we do. And I think if you've gotten sloppy on a technique and you'd been beaten on a bunch of double moves where your eyes were bad, but that's not the case with him. I thought, quite honestly, in the last game, they made some fantastic throws and catches too. So I got to, at least tip my hat to Geno Smith and to Metcalf, where I think they would have been completed on a lot of guys. And not, look here, we're not up here to make excuses. That's not how we get it on. But I would say that does go with playing aggressive outside, and we're fortunate that we have guys that are able to do that. But when it does happen, it's hard. There's consequences, and those are hard ones.
Joe White, Lone Star Live. You talked about the resiliency of Deron Bland and Jordan Lewis, and obviously they deserve a lot of credit for that. But how much does just Al Harris get from a credit standpoint for the mentality of that room?
Yeah, I would say there's certain people that you're around in your life. If you were playing that position, that's who you'd want to train you. And I think if I was playing corner, I would want Al Harris to teach it to me, because that experience on task of what it could look like, the highs and lows of the position. He just has such knowledge that he wants to, pay it forward to others. And as a teammate, Steph has a side of that to him that likes to pay it forward and likes to give back and to be of service to his other teammates in that regard. But I think it goes without showing that Al has a very clear understanding of how to play it, how to go get the ball. It's not by coincidence that a number of the players that he's coached have been just fantastic in terms of takeaways. And that doesn't just go, just for the hell of it. There's a lot that goes into that. And so if I was playing corner, that's the guy I'd want to be calling to say, hey, man, teach it to me. And for a person as humble as Duran, he's willing to accept that coaching and to look at it and apply it. And I think that's kind of where the cool stuff happens.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. I'll take one more.
On your way out, just what role would you envision for Leonard if it works out with him? And Mike told us about you putting together a team and presenting.
Yeah, I think why don't we wait and see if it happens? Fair enough? All right. I don't like to talk about guys who potentially could be with us. All right, you guys have a good one.